Call the meeting to order.
I don't see a flag.
Back there, left corner.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
they moved
back
it.
there. All right.
To the flag of the United States of America. One nation, under God, indivisible.
Liberty and justice for all.
All members are present except for Mary Sayre, who is attending remote.
So because of that, we need to do everything, kind of do a verbal roll call, or she's got to just tell us where she is.
I believe she just has to tell us where she is and if she's alone or not. She has an audience bigger than ours.
Mary Sayre, I'm in Kingston in my home and I'm alone.
You're mute, Mary. We can't hear you.
I'm not on mute.
Still didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Barely, barely.
My goodness. Well, I'm here alone in my home in Kingston.
Did anybody have a chance to read over the minutes that were sent out and
I did,
they would like to make?
I just needed to ask a question, like a point of order question. I know that Annie voted or made a statement just to add her. Do we have to make a mention that Rick had a slide to contribute as well? Or?
Vanessa, I'm sorry, I can't hear
I'm
you.
sorry, I'm not talking loud enough. I know that Annie had sent an email saying that she had she amended the minutes to say that she had the slides that she shared. Do we have to say that Rick had a slide as well? Because that wasn't in there and I didn't know if that was something that we had to include.
Yes, Rick, you have a slide that you used during your presentation for the speech impediment and how it affects, and you gave a list of several different complications.
Definitely, definitely.
Could you please forward that to us, to myself, so that she can amend that and get that in there? That's a good call, because I didn't.
Thank you.
I didn't really pick up on that. So are we gonna wait for that to come back and then do the approval, or?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the addition of the slide from Rick on the special, it was on the speech therapist, speech pathologist.
I get that motion.
motion made by Annie and seconded by Maura.
Oh.
Okay. The agenda does.
Do we all need to approve it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
need to vote.
Is there any
Roll call
discussion?
vote on that.
Aye.
Christine? Rick?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
Myself is aye.
Aye.
Mary? Approval of the minutes? I believe I saw aye.
Was that an aye, Mary? We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Gotta do something about that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I said aye.
Is that an aye?
Yes.
Yes? Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, minutes are approved. There is a portion of the agenda for the school board report from the school board representative, and no action our meeting and report from the school board representative. Rather swiftly. So this evening we're basically here to begin getting our information together for the presentation for the public hearing in January. The information that we put together is just going to be what we would like to present to the community, but it's not going to have any dollar values associated with it. So we're going to have to plug our way through this without having any actual numbers to work with at this time.
Why don't we use the dollar value of what we have from our meeting? It's our budget. We don't have to wait on the school board to, to put dollar values in.
Okay.
And then what do we just change it if the school board changes anything?
Well, if they change anything, then we have to decide if we're changing anything.
Because they come back to us.
They could, yeah, or they could,
If they change something, do they come back to us and then we?
and also after the public hearing,
So I guess you would say the deliberation would go on at the deliberative where we hash it out and get to the budget we want, that we agree to.
And of course, the public hearing where we listen to what the public has to say and decide if we have changes.
So I did not bring anything into this. I have an idea of just what we would like to say based on the previous slideshows that Annie had presented. And thinking that what I want to do is convey something other than our current budget that we're working on, maybe something for the future regarding bonds, where the bond payments are going to be finishing up in the school year 25, 26. The last bond payment falls in that budget. So that would be $2.5 million out of that. My thought would be a slide at the end saying that, here, the light at the end of the tunnel, everybody's gone through all this time. A change coming up, but based on other issues that the schools have, end of life for equipment and other stuff that goes on, we may not see $2.5 million along those lines. Yeah, so if they go and do any infrastructure, replace carpets, do computers, office furniture, furnace, any one-time purchases at that time, which we have tonight, we have no idea what those would be. And then again, that brings up the idea of the other side of the coin is, do we even want to discuss anything about that? Would I be digging a hole by trying to get that?
When is the Fremont contract coming up again? 24?
The following year,
26?
yeah.
And what's their contribution? Tammy, do you know how much? 4 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
that would
think
be,
you better discuss it.
it's a lot less, that's for sure. There will be 1 year where Fremont continues to pay, but they're not going to be paying for the bond anymore. We'd still have their kids, and we'd have the extra $1.5 million of their tuition, depending on how many kids there are and what the budget is. But that could go towards some of that infrastructure thing, maybe, if there's a need, or there might be a new bond proposal. I mean, there's so many unknowns about that. I think we need to keep it really general.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Mary?
Point of order. Our job as the budget committee is to put forth a budget for the voters. Anything having to do with the bond or the contract renewal or the jeopardy of the contract renewal with Fremont is the school board's purview. we can mention it in a slide or in a big picture, but it really is outside of our scope of what we're charged with doing.
I agree with that. Yes. I just wanted to, like, this year has been just so lousy. 2020 is just going to be like, just like the worst year I think any of us will know. I just wanted to turn around and maybe put something out there that would be on a positive note outside of, the kids being back into school and everything wasn't all bottoms up. Maybe that's an area we shouldn't even go into.
I don't know.
I mean, if you're gonna bring it up, Jim, I mean, do it in the same vein of talking about the potential for the lost revenue in that same time frame. You can make a sentence about it. Just let people know that, while we're gonna wrap up this bond and be free and clear, we also are going to be in a position where we might lose that $4 million in tuition revenue. So that's part of what, the superintendent and his administrative team and the school board are all trying to balance.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, in addition to the teacher's contract and the administrator's contract. I mean,
I like Mary's idea. I think it's good to keep it very basic on a slide. It's good to mention it and keep it on the forefront for people so it sort of stays fresh in everybody's head. I think it'd be good to continue to mention it, so people have an idea of when a lot of that stuff has come down the pipeline, because you do lose sight of those kind of things and it does impact the budget. So we shouldn't speak too much to detail, but I do think it would be good to add it. I'd also like to see, I think a lot of folks are going to have questions regarding COVID, and so I don't know how we sort of incorporate that in there to sort of address with them. I know it doesn't affect the future budget, but I don't know, I struggle with that. Never mind.
Matt had a nice slide that he provided to us at our last meeting that talked about, the COVID related expenses that he had incurred, and maybe it can be up to date through, the end of the calendar year by the time we present it in. No. By the time we present it at the first deliberative.
Matt's slide right now. He mentioned some of the, different things in here. Oh, this isn't the one with the COVID information. I just feel like we had a lot of those questions regarding, where was the budget? Where was the money spent last year? Like, where was there extra funds? So I think it would be good to make the public aware of that,
Well, that's what I was driving at with my questions. And I think the way that Matt and Tom phrased it is, look, if we're doing this right, we have a 3 to 4% surplus. And that money is there for the school board to use as they deem appropriate, as they need. So the money, does get transferred within in-house if possible. Like Tom said, if they need something at the high school, they look for a surplus at the high school. But we can talk about the fact that there is surplus built into the budget on purpose. And it can be shuffled around.
Yes.
Sorry. I absolutely agree with saying that there is the surplus deliberately around 3% surplus built into the budget, which is good budget behavior. And if not needed for an emergency of some kind, then it gets returned. It's year after year and it continues to be built in there. And, one of the goals is to build up those reserve funds so that they become kind of, maybe that surplus can get a little tighter. Certainly Tom tightened up on some of it this year with some of his suggested reductions in supplies and so forth based on prior year actuals. So, it's kind of moving a little bit in that direction. But I also wanted to add another thing kind of relating to the COVID discussion. Is the positive side of that is that the money is in the budget this year. It's not being used for intervention because of staffing, but it is in the budget this year for the intervention, and it is in the budget for next year for intervention. Because I think the discussion about the paras being reduced has, made some people from what I see on Facebook, very concerned that these are the interventionist paras. And I think we need to really emphasize that that's there, the plan is there. You know, Thomas said that it's good not only to help kids get up to and stay at grade level, but it's also helpful to relieve teachers of having to say to children, you know, just wait, I have to help Johnny. So Susie, you keep busy with something. She can actually spend time stimulating some of the kids who are ready to move on. So, I mean, that's going to be an exciting thing. As somebody said on Facebook, you know, if we actually do that kind of stuff, we're going to become like one of the #1 desired towns to move to. Nobody does it. So, you know, and we're moving in that direction.
Where are we thinking in terms of backtracking for the slides? Like, are we gonna take some of these slides? Because I know last year, I know Andy, you came up with a lot of slides, and I think that you took some slides too that maybe Tom or Matt did. So are we gonna go through, maybe pick some of the slides that have already been done? Is that what we're,
Yes.
is that what we're doing now, is picking slides, or?
Kind of staying conceptual right now, but what different things, and then we can then fill in the framework, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of picking some of the slides, though. I think some of the slides that Andy did last year were good, so it's easy enough to update them. Obviously,
Somebody made a comment about saying, I don't know if it was Vanessa or Annie, about the surpluses. And I'm just looking right now, there's this, I don't know who did the slide, if this was Matt's slide or not. But there's that whole slide on where those surpluses came from.
From last year?
It says FY 2020 surplus funds used to reduce tax rate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whose slide.
That's Matt's.
That's Matt. Okay.
That's the one I was talking about.
Okay. And okay, yeah. And I think too, we should have like the estimated tax impact. I think a lot of Matt's slides are probably really good.
Yep.
That's number 9. I think that always is like a key one to have, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that I added it up, and it's roughly $2 million, and we had roughly $2.5 million in surplus. So there's that other $500,000 of just budget that's already in there. And some of those things in that slide, a lot of the things in that slide are partially COVID related and partially just normal operations related. We didn't not spend all those supplies because of operations. Utility savings were definitely COVID, but you know, some of the others are partial.
Yeah, I like Matt's break. I'm not a big fan of charts, you know what I mean? So looking at Matt's slides, and this is just my personal opinion, but you know, where he's got the school tax rates local, and he's got the pie, you know, the line graphs and the surplus funds. I like the breakdown just in terms of, you know, 201,000 is the unanticipated tuition. You know, I'm not a fan of a lot of graphs. So it's hard for folks to read in the audience. I like numbers and short phrases, and to keep it very clear and concise for people. So that would just be my personal input. I think we try to get away from doing a lot of that last year. We try to really simplify a lot of the slides because, you know, they were kind of difficult to read in the past.
So the slide number 9 from Matt's presentation, default budget and estimated school. Based on the default budget, that's one we'd like to use.
Yeah, and 8 as well. That one is the operating budget.
Well,
7.
Maybe it's because I'm old, but I really need people to project.
Oh, into the
you know, we're talking through masks, and,
Yeah.
you know, I really need that. It's
Yeah,
much,
I can't hear Jim.
Okay.
You can't?
Now I can, but
Sorry
there
about
was,
that.
nope, that's okay.
We'll have to lean down when we.
All right. I'm going to say that we should definitely have 6 through 9 of Matt's slides on the on our presentation.
Well, 6 is the FY 2020 surplus funds to reduce
Yeah.
the tax. Okay.
Yep. And I don't know if we want to add anything to that because we were talking about COVID. I don't really see anything here that says Or maybe this isn't the COVID slide. Maybe this doesn't really say anything about COVID.
Yeah, this one doesn't. Yeah, I agree with that. I think we could probably condense Matt's. Did we on Annie's presentation? The default versus the operating budget and then the tax impact?
What's convince Matt to what?
Yeah, so in Annie's slide last year, we just condensed some of the tax impact onto one slide.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we put default and operating budget on the same one?
Yeah, we put
Is that what we
default and then
did?
proposed and yep.
Yeah.
And we did it in round numbers, I think, in terms of a $300,000 house rather than the, you know, pennies to the dollar, penny for the thousand or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and typically in how much it's increasing rather than the total amount, because most people don't really know what the total amount is. So, you know, the increase helps them figure out what they're voting for or decrease.
Oh,
sorry.
so are you saying by increase, are you saying that we show that if you're in Kingston, it's gonna go up, you know, $100 this year?
Or 15 cents or something. And in Newton, it would,
Okay.
the tax rate would go up 3 cents or 14 cents or down 55 cents or whatever. Um, because of that proposed change.
Does it make sense to put in what that dollar value would be versus, or is that what you were just saying, you like that we didn't do that?
I think it should be both.
Because for me personally, I want to know the dollar value of what it went up. I want to know it went up $500.
So you want, so on Annie's old slide, she has the proposed budget for 36 million. Underneath, we had Kingston at $163, Newton at 210. And then, but we didn't break it down to the lower level in terms of like 17 cents per thousand. I'm not objected to doing both, you know what I mean?
Okay,
I think, but I don't like just the cents portion. I like it in the total portion as well, so people can.
agreed, because I don't really know what 48, on this slide that Matt has, I don't really know what 48 cents means.
Exactly. So
So I
like,
agree.
yeah.
I want to know that it's going up $200 or whatever it's going to be. The 3% though is probably good to have there as well, because I think some people maybe are thinking in terms of cost of living or inflation. So maybe they might want to just, I think for some people, if they might think 3%, oh yeah, that's inflation. I don't know.
I just want to circle back to something Annie said earlier and just get you guys' input on it. But I know that it's good to mention something about surplus funds and them being built into the budget, but I just hate to set that expectation of people that, oh, these are surplus funds, there's 3%, which is about $1 million. Oh, that's going to get refunded back to this. You know what I mean? So I think it could be a double-edged sword in some respect, people, because then they have that mentality of the old school slush money that's in the budget, you know.
Yeah, there,
So I hate to like just put a round figure on it and set an expectation. I think it's okay to mention it, but
yeah, without setting up, you know, I mean, there's no guarantee that that's not going to get used. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We, you know, in the last several years, maybe 4 or 5 years, we've had about $1 million to $1.3 million, $1.5 million as the normal of what's been refunded. It's kind of, and now we've started also, our school board has started retaining that emergency funds. So we know we're going to have 566,000 in addition to whatever's in there. And Matt's got that in his list of revenue estimates. It used to be that the business administrator would make an estimate of how much would be unspent at the end of the year and put that in the source of revenues or in the estimated tax impact. Do you remember that, Tammy? She would put $750,000 in there every year. And
Okay,
then
yeah.
if the school board had a year-end spending spree, then it would be only 300,000 or it'd be 500,000 or whatever. And if they didn't, it could be $1 million. It was this made up number. I'm glad Matt doesn't put that in here.
I think that was one of the things that was driven out. 17, I don't think it was even showing up in 2016. I think that was one of the first things that Ambrose said. He was not.
Yeah, it's just a made up number, right?
So what is it that we're trying to really convey to the voters in our like presentation this year? Last year, we were really trying to convey like how the intervention money was being allocated. The build outs, what the build out costs were, what the credits were, we were trying to help folks understand what was going into the budget with the reconfiguration, because that was such a goal of of the school board last year. I mean, what is it that we need to convey this year to people so they understand? There isn't.
I think it's important for everyone to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to be voting on contracts and that this is a lean budget. It's a needs-based budget. And yes, there's surplus there, but if the superintendent and his department heads feel that there's additional need for anything,
We're losing you for the last couple sentences.
I think it's important to note that it's a needs-based budget and it's lean on purpose because we have contracts on the table that we really need to get approved. We want to get approved as a community, I think, and as a budget committee, I think we need to convey that it's important to get these approved for our staff so we can retain and attract the best possible educators for our students. But talking about the surplus, my fear is that in the past, there have been people in the community at the first deliberative that want to add money to the budget. And I can tell you, if that happens, people are going to be angry and they're going to penalize the teachers. It's a lousy thing, but we've got history to prove that it happens time and time again. I just think if we can find a way to convey to them that, it's a delicate balance, let's approve, this is a logical needs-based budget. There is surplus in there in the event they have a critical need or they need to hire somebody, or we do have a blip in student population or in IEPs or whatever. There is money there and there are reserves set aside. So there's really no need to add additional money. It is there.
I think that's really good.
So we'll drive it home that the teacher contracts are our first priority.
Well, passing the budget is our first priority.
Well, outside of that, but the extra message to convey is that we want everybody to have an appreciation for what the teacher's contract will do for the district.
Especially under these circumstances, toward the end of last year and the beginning of this year, the on again, off again, nobody's happy about education under duress, no matter who you are, what district you're in. And I think it's important to convey that to our staff, the people who are on the payroll. And I think as a committee, we need to speak openly and say, you know what, this is a needs-based budget for a reason, because it's really important to acknowledge and reward and thank our educators for the job they're doing, especially under these circumstances. That's my opinion.
I think there's also a flip side of that, which is that if people have paid attention to the fact that some of the statistics, the cost per student, some of the measurements, which are not defining, they're not, don't mean that we need to operate in those directions, but they're still, they're there and they indicate that we still have a lot of money in there. And it's just as foolish for somebody to propose, a huge further decrease, because there is extra money in there, because we need the extra money. They can't operate efficiently and safely without having that reserve in there, that 3% reserve. So the fact that it's need-based plus a reserve, is important to retain.
Well, Annie, if we just convey that, look, the the superintendent and his department heads and the business administrator did a great job letting us know exactly where the critical needs are forecast. You know, we did some Q&A, we did our due diligence, the school board did their due diligence, and we, in the end, hopefully are going to arrive at something that's not far off, so that through the process of checks and balances, we would like to convey to the community that, you know, this is a legitimate, solid number. You know, it makes sense for our community to support this. You know, you don't want to say we don't want to have anybody increase or anybody decrease it, but just say, you know, this is a good number. We're confident.
I struggle a little bit just because I don't support a lot of the staff cuts, you know what I mean? So I struggle with how do you convey that to the community? Because I do think that that's a concern of people, you know, the amount of staff cuts that was in the budget this year. So, you know, I get what everybody's saying, you know, and just conveying that it's a lean budget and we needed to do that. But, you know, it's hard when you don't feel like it's a favorable budget. You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people want to see so much of a reduction. I know that there's statistics for the average student ratio and all that stuff. I don't really want to mention that because I don't know that a lot of people buy into that.
There are a lot of people who do.
Yeah, but
There
I
are a
just,
lot of people, one of the things that's important to realize is that 85% of the people in our communities don't have kids in the schools.
yeah, I know, but I just think,
And that doesn't mean they don't support the schools. It means
Yeah.
that they don't have kids in the schools and they don't have the personal filter going on to see, you know, to make their decisions. They can look at more fact-based. They don't get afraid of change. They don't get, you know, concerned. They can trust the administrators. They don't have to say, well, I think, you know, we need more paras because I think we need more paras when the special ed director says we don't, you
Yeah.
know?
but I think that initiative is coming from the school board. You know, the school board is driving that initiative to bring the cost per pupil down, and then they relay that to the superintendent, who then creates a budget, right? So I just want to be careful in what we relate to the community from a budget standpoint and not introducing, you know, school board initiatives and stuff in our budget. You know, so there's certain things I would like to keep out of the budget, you know, for reasons that I know that you say a lot of people support it, but a lot of people, there's differing opinions within the community on certain aspects. So I think we should be wary in just what we present to people.
Well, I'd like to say that our job is to present our budget.
Yes.
And if any member has concerns about the budget, they have to go to the mic and talk on the floor as a member of the community. When you're up on the stage and we're presenting our budget, we've all voted.
Yeah.
So should we leave, so kind of to your point, Vanessa, should we leave out of our presentation the staff cuts?
No.
Or are we not being transparent?
We wouldn't be, I think they need to be in there.
No, what I think, I mean, put you off, but I think that whatever, or however, the school administration came to their number for this budget in comparison to last year's, that has to be shown. That last year we had this year we're going at it with this much less money. And this is why we're doing it. We're coming out of this with 6.5 less teachers because.
And less students, which is what's driving the staffing. We're having less students. It's not like they're just making an arbitrary cut. It's driven by enrollment and projected enrollment.
No, but it's a 15-year decline, and it's
Got that.
projected to go on for the next 10. So by outside people, you know,
Slightly disagree, but yes.
I can't hear you.
I would slightly disagree, but it's correct.
Disagree that it's projected to continue to decline.
I would slightly disagree, sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, we had an asset study. It's not my opinion.
So I guess I'm not sure, and I don't know that as a committee, we ever come to a consensus on what our goal is. I mean, and kind of something that Mary said is, we're trying to have this fine balance of, we want to get the teacher's contract to pass. And kind of after last week's meeting, I kind of forgot that this is how it happens, but at the end of the day, all we are kind of doing is giving a dollar value. The school board can go and do whatever they want in terms of the teachers. And as Tom, you know, we talked about the bringing out the lease and they can do whatever they want. So I guess that's maybe where I was thinking, well, we're not really approving the teachers, but are we collectively trying to approve this so that we can get the teacher's contract passed? And that's maybe why I was thinking, do we need to leave that part out, or are we just really not all on the same page where some of us want a higher operating budget? And I guess I'm just not, I'm not sure how we move forward, because I'm not sure if we're on the same page or if we really have the same goal.
I don't mind saying anything about, I liked the way Mary phrased it, you know, in terms of just conveying that it's a lean budget and we're trying to get the, like, I have no problem sending that message. But what I don't want to do is add statistical data like what Annie had said, just in terms of the, you know, the cost impact per student, you know, because again, I think that that is initiative that, you know, that's not something that we're looking at. That was, you know, that's not how we formulate our budget. We formulate it based on other criteria. So,
Good point.
so that's, you know, that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'd like to keep it on a more broad spectrum, just so I can feel comfortable with what we convey to people. So,
Well, it isn't the basis of any decision that we made.
Mary? Mary, you up?
To Vanessa's point, I think it's critical to show the slides about the reduction in students over the last, however, 4 or 5 years, and the forecast for it to continue to decline, because that is what's driving the staff reductions. And it, you know, people also need to keep in mind that even though, you know, we've approved a $35.5 million budget to put forth, that it's up to the school board to spend it. And if Jody comes back and says, I need that speech person and I need 5 more paras, then the school board can find the money for that. So that's what I think is important to convey, that it's a forecast. It's not an exact science. The staffing is driven solely by student enrollment and the projections for next year. And I think that's really all we need to say. Like,
Lost you. We can't hear you.
Lost you.
Can't hear you. She's cursing. We lost
Guess
you
it's a
on the
good
last
thing then.
2 sentences, Mary.
you didn't hear me?
Is one that needs to be presented by the school board.
what does?
Slide 9, Matt's presentation on the default budget, that's not our budget. The board needs to present that.
Weren't we talking about combining those 2 slides? 8 and 9?
Okay. But it's a summary thing, but the school board still needs to present the default
Okay.
budget. Emmy needs to.
Yeah, they do that every year. They present that slide within our own budget, right? Or how did we do it last year?
Larry got up.
And Larry came to the mic.
Okay. Did we do it in the middle of your budget? Okay.
Would that be Tammy this year because she's the school board rep?
Yeah, sure.
You're welcome.
How do you like crowds?
I'll present the default budget if that's what you want.
I do think also that we should present Tom's important things to consider to add, because, you know, the school board added the math program. And I think, you know, he's when he gave that slide, he said, these are things to kind of think about in coming years, not just this next year. And frankly, I thought some of those could come out of the revolving fund for technology as we get rents for renting the middle school. But, you know, the books were number 2 on his list. And
But were those, I don't remember that slide. So were those things that he was looking to add in the future?
he was looking for the school board to look at those as far as how much urgency and how much they wanted to fund it. And what the school board decided was to take that first number 1,
Yeah.
which was the math program.
Yeah.
And with the 67,000 already in there, all it took was the 40, which was, I mean, a lot of money, but it didn't take 117,000. So that's the 40 they added back. But every single thing that we suggested adding was not on his list. Just
Yeah, I don't want to add everything on Tom's list, but I'd like to add what we put in there. You know, if Tom wants to revisit, present those next year to the school board as things that he wants to add, I think we could do that. But I think we should just speak to this year's budget. So I have no problem adding the $40,000 for the math intervention, but I don't want to add any additional, books or anything that could change next year. So.
right. But I mean, the school board could decide how they're going. We gave them an extra 45,000. They can
Yeah.
decide, how they're going to spend it.
So, and the same note, if we're gonna make a comment, regarding adding 40,000 for the additional math, we could in turn make a comment how we propose to add the additional money for the one para. You know what I mean? It sort of goes hand in hand. The intent of what the money is with the understanding that they can do with
But
it.
I think I'm envisioning a slide, Tom's slide with those things listed, and then just put a check mark next to that one. There's something that the school board has decided is good for next year. And then they have to come up with their strategic plan. A lot of that stuff is going to be in the strategic plan.
So are you saying like the books and stuff like that, or?
I'm just saying, put in that slide along with the slide about, what the specific reductions are.
Yeah, I'd like to see the slides before I can. Again, I don't want to speak to future budgets. I want to keep it. I don't mind mentioning things that are built into our existing budget. You know what I mean? Like where money is, but I don't want to present things that people would like to add to additional budgets. I don't think that that's our position to do that. Again, I think we need to focus on the budget that we're preparing.
So can I just add that that slide, if I recall, was a list of needs that Tom feels that we're going to have to address.
Yeah.
Not so much, these are future budget needs, these are needs. And he put a dollar amount on several of them were at least $100,000 or more. So I guess I think it would be valuable to inform the community of, number one, needs that we have. Trying to keep this budget as lean as possible, we made the choice not to fund them this year, but they are going to be needs that are going to be funded at some, need to be funded in the future. If you're talking about future planning, as with Fremont coming up on the horizon, these are also needs that are going to be coming up on the horizon.
Do we have that slide? So
It was in Tom's budget
I'm
presentation.
looking for it. I'm
Find
on
the
the
slide.
SRSD
In my
website,
email,
and
but
I'm
it's
looking
buried.
at Tom's presentation. Budget.
Wouldn't that?
Oh, here it is. It's slide 14 of his presentation, board discussion and choice. And he's got math program K through 6 estimate 117,000, books for reading program K through 8 80,000, Chromebooks for grades 7 and 9 40,000. See, that's one of the technology that I think could be funded through the technology fund. Professional development another 50,000. I don't know why he's got COVID costs on there, but 100,000, and then information technology renewal 100,000. That might or might not be able to come out of the revolving fund. So I really just see, professional development, books, and math as the three things on there that will be addressed in the future. And I think it would be good if we asked Tom if it would be okay to present those things and just check off. First one is in this budget.
Did he
I have not
email?
been able to find that.
Yeah, I can't find them either.
It's on the home page of the SAU website
Oh,
I was looking at it the other day and I still didn't find it.
in the first paragraph, in the middle.
Really? I could have been distracted, but I was.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong.
I think it's just as valuable to highlight that there are some needs that or just some expenses that we didn't fund in this budget. I think it's informative and transparent to the community.
Slide 9.
I think it was 14.
Oh, there we go. Board discussion.
Sorry, what's that number?
21. Slide 20. It's 21 for me. I don't know.
Yes, I have it as 14.
Yeah, it might be my view. That might be it. I don't know. It's weird. So yeah, it
But
says
that
board
is what
discussion.
it, that's the label.
That's illegal.
That's the label, board
Oh.
discussion and choice. That's how that slide is labeled, sorry.
But yeah.
It's got the whole budget book in it too.
Yeah, yeah. I just struggle. I just struggle with introducing things. I mean, I get the point of putting information out there that, hey, these are things that we're going to be looking to budget in the future. But again,
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a balancing act that you sort of have to do. Two sides of this budget. There's 5% of the people that don't have kids in school. There's parents that are looking for, what's being added for the educational purposes. I don't think it's a bad idea to include it. I hear the school board saying, we want better test scores. We want. And then I hear the superintendent say, I'm giving you a needs only budget, So stuff is going to have to be discussed at some point. So
do we just eliminate the tax impact, from it and just bulletize?
I think that's a good idea.
yeah, I mean, if anything, we might want to just clarify the COVID thing. I think this is put together before there was word of a vaccine coming out, and I think that's why Tom had it in there. So it doesn't have to be in the slide.
I think it makes sense to run it by Matt, before
Louder?
actual president. I would think it would make sense to run it by Tom and Matt to refresh the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also need them to give it to us in PowerPoint and Excels, not in PDFs. Otherwise, we have to recreate every slide.
It's coming in as XLS.
Presentation, it looks like they did it in Google Docs, copy and paste it, or we can just use Google Docs.
So Vanessa, you were suggesting that we just leave out the Tom's information on the cost per student and the student teacher ratio, because that wasn't part of our formulation.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep it on more of a top level, the current budget is based on the staff reductions for the current budget is based on on student projections, and just leave it very top level. So you're mentioning why there's staff reductions within the budget, and that is what it was based on. But I don't want to go into the cost per pupil and stuff like that. That's just me,
I'll tell you from either standpoint of, parents looking at, spend more money. This is my kid in school. I want everything, to people really saying our cost per student is still way, way high. I mean, we don't need that conversation this year. I don't think. I agree with you. Let's just leave that slide out. How does everybody else feel?
Conversations are happening. So the best that we can provide a budget presentation that sort of addresses both, in my opinion, better for everybody, right?
So you think you should put the
I
numbers
think
in
there's
there?
wins on both sides here. I mean, this isn't, in my opinion, that I've only been in town for 6 years. This isn't the worst budget I've seen in the last 6 years. Tough year, so there are going to be a lot of these items are going to have to be discussed next year, the year after. And, scores aren't going to improve if these things aren't addressed. Continue to move forward with a needs only budget. They're not going to improve anything.
can I just make one comment to that? About the things that are being addressed right now within the existing budget. We have two math coordinators, one for the elementary, one for the middle school and high school. We didn't have that before. Furthermore, the plan is that with the interventionists, these math coordinators are actually going to be able to do something. They're going to have something to handle. The elementary math coordinator was handling K through 8, which was 3 different schools running all over the place and also doing helping with intervention. Now we've got a plan where we're within this budget where we're going to be able to do both. Plus they're coordinating, the two math coordinators are coordinating together with Dr. Haynes to figure out what it is that we're missing, by really digging in for the first time in, I don't know how long, into where the gaps are because of the SAT data. So that there's actually stuff going on. Furthermore, I listen to the ISA meetings, so I get all this information from them. But and that's the administrators talking, not the school board members. But furthermore, Grace, who's the high school math coordinator, said that there are now math programs that are available that are more balanced as far as theory versus actually doing math, which has been one of the problems that, some people say, let's go back to the old way. Well, there are some new things that are good, but for the first time these programs were not available 6 years ago. There's some really remarkable programs out there, and that's what they're funding by. So there's some stuff going on to really improve those math scores and really address it. And to me, that's just great news because it's something that's, that's been a huge problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think you helped make my point. My point is that there are good things happening, and I think there's a balancing act that has to be discussed. But then you have a superintendent saying a number of times that I presented a needs-only budget. So I think that's the balance, right? We have to make sure that the parents understand there have been a lot of additions, and there are a lot of great things that are going on. Is there more work to do? Absolutely. Is it going to take funding? Absolutely.
Okay, so when we talk about a needs-based budget, we're talking about a budget that the administration and the school board is confident will meet the needs in order to, you work toward our goals and fulfill the priorities that we have determined, which are improving the math, curriculum, improving math scores, improving performance overall. We're not saying this is like a budget that's not going to get us where we want to go. Needs-based means we have determined what our needs are, and we feel that this budget will get us there, will help us to, deliver education and fulfill our objectives. Okay, so I just want to needs-based doesn't have to be a dirty phrase. We actually believe, we are confident, our administration is confident that this budget will help us deliver education, and meet our goals, which are to deliver really quality education, funding intervention, and all the things that Amy talked about, intervention and, assessing our math performance and trying to figure out how to improve it and get a new curriculum in there. That's all in this budget.
Again, thanks. I think that helps make my point. That is the point I'm trying to make. A lot of good things in the budget. And I think that's our job, is to make sure we point that out.
Totally agree.
So you think that we should go a level like Annie's proposed and add the cost per pupil ratio and stuff like that? You think we should get that nitty gritty and stuff?
I don't know about that, but I mean, I'm specifically talking, I thought we were talking when I chimed in here about whether or not we're going to put the list of items that are going to be discussed in future years. That's about it. And I will just say, all I heard in the last couple of meetings was needs and wants. So, I understand that, what you just said, but what I heard was there's needs and wants, and they're two different things. And that came from the superintendent's mouth. Did he give us a needs-based budget? Sure, but there's a lot of things that he would want in order to improve as well. So,
right. And they're on that list. They're on that running list, which is why I agree that it's a good thing to include them.
I made a little list of a series of slides that I wanted to, think about, and love to, kind of share it, and then we can decide what ones come in, what else goes in, what comes out. The first one was kind of how the budget's prepared. And I did put in here, actually, the superintendent's recommendation needs to provide quality education. I think it's important, instead of saying needs-based budget, to say, these are what we need to provide quality education. The amount and the comparison to the current. So just kind of discussing that.
Second, Annie. Do you have those slides to
I
show
have not
now?
made them, no. I thought you were probably going to make some slides, and, so I just
Right, yeah.
was doing a
Yes.
checklist. No.
So, yep.
I'm happy to help you if you want.
Oh, yes. My
Okay.
PowerPoint skills aren't all that great. I
That's
was
all right.
practicing today. I was like, oh God, this is
Yeah.
horrible.
That's one program I haven't mastered, so I won't offer my
I'll be
help.
happy to help you once we come up with a list of, it doesn't take, I'm actually pretty good at it, so.
I'll critique your list like they're going out of style, but.
Then I had the school board presents the default. And then we go back with the comparison of the proposed versus the default, which is what Laura was talking about with those slides 8 and 9 or whatever they are. And then I thought it was really important to move into, it contains full funding for intervention, planned but not executed during COVID-19, and review the reconfiguration, where the money came from for that and how it was spent.
That is a big, yeah, I think that's a definite need. There's a lot of questions about that.
So then, what I don't have in here, but we've talked about, is changes from current, getting into the specific changes from the current to the proposed.
Oh, what we voted on?
Yeah, I mean, when you're, it's kind of a broad comparison of just the numbers first, but then kind of dig into some of the details, like the staff reductions and the para reductions and some of the supply savings and some of the additions. I can't remember what they were, but all those things. So potentially one para, but get into that list, and then have the important additions that the superintendent gave to consider for now and for next year and for the future. And then the school board added, I mean, when you do the changes, when you do the important additions, I think you could discuss, the math curriculum and just kind of have a slide where, the click checks off math curriculum. That because it would have already been there. I'm not sure where the bond, then I had one kind of, it's a reduction of over 900,000, whatever that number is. And is there enough in the budget, basically? And that would be the high level discussion that Mary was suggesting, of there is, like all good budget planning, there is about 3% in there for, planning in the future. Show that the buffer is still in the budget. In addition, there's 566,000 being held back in emergency funds, and there are these other reserve funds. And then I think show the revenues of, the projected revenues. And then
Projected revenues,
that's projected revenues.
that was from the
No, that was the revenues from the state, from special ed, from,
right.
That whole slide that was in that, is
Yep.
that slide 9? Or
It was in
6?
one of the slides that I
one of
suggested.
them.
I think it might have been like 6 or something.
Might be 6, yeah.
The 6, that was in the 6 through 9 that I suggested from Matt, had the revenues that Annie said.
estimated revenues for fiscal year 2022.
So show that, and then,
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
so therefore, what does this budget mean to taxpayers? And show the dollars and you know, the dollars as Mara was talking about. Discuss kind of the conceptual things that we've discussed, which are the fact that the bond payment is ending in 25, 26. These are future considerations, right? The bond payment is ending. The Fremont tuition plan is up in the air at the moment. Cost per student has remained about the same for the last several years, even with declining enrollments. So, you know, to me that's not bad, you know, because it's really hard to do, and yet we're doing all the good programs. And that might be a good time to actually talk about some of those programs just very briefly on a very high level. Then at the same time, the student teacher ratio was on that same slide of Tom's. I'd like to simplify that slide a lot. I thought it was really, it just had packed in an awful lot of information, which I like to get, but I don't think it was appropriate for this. And then the enrollment in the past and projections for the future, and then just kind of the next steps. We listen, we finalize the budget, we present it, the deliberative, the voters set the budget, and the voters vote in March. And at that time, you could also say, and one of the considerations that the school board and budget committee have expressed repeatedly is the importance of passing the teacher contract. So that's what I kind of put together. This is not my original thing. I added in a bunch of stuff from here.
Oh, good.
I liked Annie's idea about, you know, adding in the student teacher ratio. I think, and even just the, you know, maybe if we wanted to feed in, you know, some of the reason for the reduction in staff was because of the increased class sizes too. It sort of just mentions, you know, this is why there was reduction in staff for this reason, if we're talking about, if we mention the cost per student.
I think it's really important to mention too that, you know, it isn't a slash and burn kind of reduction in staff. It was very considered, like in looking at, there's an increase at the middle school. It's, you know, that's what the kids need. So I think it's important to kind of show that balance.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to add a slide, like you said, like as you're talking, I'm sort of like trying to formulate it like on my paper, like you have an addition slide, you know, this is what this budget addressed. It addressed the 40,000, it addressed 2 additional staff at the middle school, like just key focus additions, what it did address, you know, the SOROC, this, you know, like it kind of break down everything that we feel like is appropriate to mention in terms of additions. I like the idea of, you know, having a wish list slide, you know what I mean? This will be wish list stuff. And then, you know, things to consider and talk about the bond payments. And then, you know, maybe you mentioned some of the changes, you know, the reduction in staff and, you know, so I think it's just the way that we put it together. I think it'll be good. It gives people a full, you know, here's why this happens. Here's what's going on here. This is why this is in the budget, you know, in addition to conveying the lean budget proposal.
I like too that,
Mary's trying to
sorry,
share. Very good.
I just wanted to point out, Vanessa referred to it as a wish list. I think it's important not to call it a wish list because it's not something that is probably not going to materialize. It's in the crosshairs. It's just, I mean, how much change can they take on in any given time? I mean, we've got a new grading system. We've got a new math program coming. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So it's not so much that it's a wish list as it is something that is in the pipeline to be implemented, to be adopted, to be enacted.
Okay, more?
Do we want to mention at all when we talk about the reduction in staff? I just see people maybe being concerned that we're going to be having layoffs, and I'm going to assume that we're not doing layoffs, that so many people leave every year through attrition. Do we want to make any mention that this doesn't equal layoffs, that normally, I don't know if there's an average teachers that retire. Do we want to maybe say something like that to calm the fear of, you know, Susie's first grade teacher is going to get laid off this year? Do we want to say that? Like, do we want to, or?
When Tom presented the budget to us, he said that he's been able to achieve all of the reduction in force through attrition. And he's hoping that that's how it's going to play out.
But I know our teaching staff is getting younger, so the amount of people retiring so that I don't know if that narrative is still true. You know what I mean? I don't know how true it is, so I just got concerned in mentioning that.
I wonder if we should look into, I feel like, is there a certain amount of teachers that can retire each year? I feel like I heard there were people that wanted to retire. Do you know, is there truth to that?
There isn't, Tammy would know better than I. It's 3
Early, you're talking early.
3 for
The
early.
board can approve early retirements. There's a maximum cap, but I don't believe the number of teachers. I think anyone can retire. I don't think there's a cap on teachers, you know, choosing to retire. There's a difference between early retirement and.
So there could be potentially teachers who want to do early retirement but can't. The people who want to retire, they can retire, but is it that you're saying that people who want to early retire have an issue that there's a cap on?
There's a cap on the number that the board has to.
You have to talk louder. Talking to you, Mike.
Jim would know better.
Also, people will change jobs. Four different ways that teachers will leave Sanborn. And out of all of those ways, my understanding is nobody's been laid off. The term is rift, you know. Yeah, in this series of reductions. And if you look at talking about the student-teacher ratio. The student-teacher ratio during this time has actually gone down. So if you look at Tom's presentation, the student-teacher right now in our current situation is 8.5 to 1. 8.5 students to 1 teacher. A couple of years ago, it was in the 10s. Next year, it will be 9.5. Which the state average is around 12. So there's the student-teacher ratio in terms of our history and in terms of state averages is very low right now.
But do we want to maybe get more information of if our staff is still, we have a lot of younger staff, but do we want to maybe get a nice idea or a sense if there's still maybe a fair amount of people, or just leave it out, or do we want to mention it at all? I think that there's going to be a lot of fear that people are going to be concerned that teachers are going to get laid off, when it sounds like that's not going to be the case. Or just leave it alone.
That's not the goal, but I don't know that it's safe to commit.
Right.
You know, I would hate to say something to the community and then something happens that's out of everybody's.
Do we state
expectation.
in past history has shown over the last 5 years, we've reduced staff and it's all been through attrition? Do we maybe say that?
Safe to say that, that's a fact.
If it, I mean, we can fact check that, but if it is indeed a fact that over the last 5 years, whatever, 5 years, it's all been through attrition, do we want to add that if it is indeed a fact?
Well, is that something that Tom's going to be also presenting himself?
No.
Nothing.
This is our presentation.
No, I mean at the deliberative.
No.
Nothing. He'll not be adding any of his own slides.
No, he won't be
Not for
adding,
us to present, but
right. He won't be adding any slides, but you know Tom, he's going to talk. So hear that, Tom?
It won't be a formal presentation from the superintendent.
Tammy can't hear you.
There's not a formal presentation from the superintendent at the hearing or the deliberative. I hate these microphones.
Vanessa.
I don't think there's any harm in mentioning, but I side with Tammy. I'd be concerned about putting something in our slides and have that not be the case. You know, I always err on the side of caution. So you could say historically,
Right.
you know, the teacher reductions that we've, you know, absorbed in the last 5 years, we've been able to do through teacher attrition,
Right.
you know.
Period.
Maybe that's something we can fact check. And if we, you know, if we can come up with whatever the fact might be, we put it historically the last 5 years or whatever we can fact check. And
Laura, you really need a bigger nose.
my lips are so big.
Your mask.
Gotta have fun
I
with
like
it.
your mask. It's really.
I can give you some of mine. Is there anything else that anybody thinks ought to go in there? You know, added to notes here. I'll be happy to, you know, run back and forth with you with some ideas, Jim, and I'll put together something and send it off, and you play with it, and
Sure.
you know, we can talk about it, and then we can bring it back here.
Yes, yes, I definitely need that. I definitely.
Happy to help.
And you're not the only one that can provide that information. Anybody is welcome to provide slides. Go ahead, Vanessa.
So the only thing I want to mention, I don't know if we should build on this, but last year we did an overview of the 2-year plan for overview, which does not include one-time cost to modify the high school building. So that refresh my memory. What was the 2-year plan? So it's because it says elementary grades reorganization, middle school grades expenses, reading and math specialists, annual net savings. So does that 2-year plan still factor into this year? Like we were just talking about year 1. So I don't know for just in terms of consistency, if we want to sort of follow up with, you know, this is year 2, and or if maybe you've captured that in your slides.
That's where Rick was talking about going. Following up with the current situation versus what was presented.
Okay, so I'm asleep.
And kind of touched on some of that.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I'll be happy to. That would be a good way to bring in that whole point about the full funding for intervention.
Yeah.
And you do the year 1, year 2, and you know the year 1 didn't happen because of COVID, but it's all happening next year.
Yeah, I think it'd be good, you know, for folks to see that.
You guys make it so easy. You realize that? I mean, all I have to do is copy and paste last year's and make a few changes.
can we standardize that?
Yeah, right.
Change the date, a couple names, and
I think
Mary? Sorry,
I
Mary?
wanted to ask, in the past, when we have collective bargaining agreements to consider, we need to make a vote on it because it has a financial impact. We do that at the first deliberative session, not the budget hearing. But does anyone know at what point or where we are in those negotiations and when we might actually see or hear what's going on with them?
we have a member of the public here who maybe could give us an update of where we are.
It just seems that in the past we get them in the 11th hour and it's hurry up and rush and we need to vote on it. And we haven't had any knowledge or insight or any basis upon which to cast a vote, frankly.
Are you talking about warrant articles? Voting on the warrant?
No, when we have a collective bargaining agreement on the table. It's got nothing to do with the budget. I'm curious about when
It's
we might.
definitely still under negotiation,
It's not finished yet.
being negotiated.
Yeah, when it's finished, we know.
Right. Negotiations are ongoing.
And ongoing.
Thank you.
So, and Mary, I'm sorry, I couldn't, so we vote on that at the deliberative, is that what you would say? Because
At the first deliberative, so that it shows up on the warrant with our vote, whether we support it or not.
okay.
Talking about the public hearing.
Is it the public hearing?
It'll be presented at the public hearing.
All right.
There's something in February where it has to be one. also can be public. Warrant articles, those have to be done by a certain date.
So the
The board
pub,
has to vote on that.
so, but is it definitely the public hearing that we vote on the,
The warrant articles with a financial impact and the CBA.
What happens is, all the petition warrant articles are due before the public hearing.
yes, the
Yeah.
warrant articles, I
All
understand,
the
yeah.
warrant, so, and the CBA is one of the warrant articles.
Okay,
Usually, we know what the CBA is and get to vote on it before the public hearing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that'll be the case.
okay,
We will get to vote on, we'll get to vote on it, and we'll get to vote on our final budget, knowing what the CBA is at some point. Maybe even at the deliberative, after the deliberative.
I think we know that in around January 14th. Do you think that's gonna be wrapped up by then, Jim?
All depends on, what happens between the parties.
'cause that's the public hearing is January 14th, right?
Yeah, we're holding a public hearing on January 14th.
I would assume.
And again, we don't make any changes to that. We just vote whether or not we support it.
Correct.
I just want to understand the process because it's new for me, so.
I'm looking at the calendar for January, and the date that it shows on the calendar on the SE website is January 11th, snow date January 12th. Public hearing.
We did change it.
It was originally the 14th. Tom and Matt suggested that we change it, remember, because if we get into a spell of really bad weather, the 14th, it has to be done by the 19th.
Yeah, I wrote down this is from Matt's email on the 4th. Changes in, I believe. But, okay. So it's the 11th with the snow date of the 12th.
So what are our next steps? Annie and Jim are gonna work together on roughing up something to run by us?
Yes. So together, Annie and I, and anybody else with slides to send in, just sending your information, and Annie and I will work together with putting it all into a PowerPoint presentation and go from there. Have it ready for the 17th. For everybody to kick around, say, let's move this paragraph here or there, omit this, and we'll state who had, or, Vanessa will say, hey, I really want to see this in there now that I've seen this stuff, and we massaged in there and put something together. All it puts until January. Back in January, we're back at it.
So we'll have the school boards vote on the budget because they vote on the 16th, right? Okay. Mine doesn't have to be slides, right? I can just send you guys bullets and say, hey, can we mention?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, you don't have to.
I hear
you don't have
slides
to
and I
send me
panic.
Your own PowerPoint
Yeah.
presentation.
I can't do it.
No, even just, here.
Then we'll make it into a slide and, bring it,
Yep.
bring it next week.
Okay. So do you want me to email those? Email them this week for you to prepare?
Yeah,
Okay.
whenever you got it.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready. Give us ample time to.
Is there anything you're thinking of specifically right now, or?
No, I'm just brainstorming, but I want to go through, like, I want to have up Tom's and then Matt's and then, you know what I mean? And then kind of pick and pull and.
Great, yeah.
Very visual person too. So once I see things put together, I tend to have a little bit more brainstorming.
Anybody want to add further? Mary, anything to add any further?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So we've now come to the public comment of our meeting. Crickets again. Right. Committee comments. Oh, Rick, anything?
Also, thank you.
I'm part of that 85%, so I would always be conservative on votes.
So that's done. So then our next meeting is going to be the December 17th here at the library. And we'll be expecting some feedback from the school board.
It's a joint meeting, correct?
Just tentatively.
School board is the 16th.
Okay,
Yeah, school
so,
board is
yeah,
16.
all right. Yeah, I thought I saw it was tentative, a joint meeting.
Yeah, it says tentatively joint. Why would it be joint?
It depends what the school board action takes on our budget and what they ask for. If they ask us to talk about some things and they don't want to adopt our budget, but they want to see if we can't come up with a compromise, they might want to
Okay.
have a joint meeting. It's kind of their call.
Okay.
So can I just ask a question? I'm sorry. So if they decide that they want to have a joint meeting, do they do they share anything ahead of time in terms of what they want to discuss, or do they wait to the meeting to do that?
Annie, you would be the one with the most experience on that, and I don't think you've run into that.
What I would think is the chair would talk to you
Yes.
and you would decide what information needed to be disseminated.
It would be everything that
It'd be
is
up to you.
present. Anything that I get from those school board would be distributed right out.
I only ask, it's difficult for me to process information in the moment sometimes. I'm more of like I like to process things. I really like to digest them and then sort of kick them around in my own head. So I've always kind of struggled with some of the format and some of the meetings, just getting the presentation in the meeting. Well, I want to have time to review it and comment and, so if it's just topic of discussion, it's just easier.
It isn't like we're hundreds of $1,000s apart that, we have to negotiate on.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just, I can't always think of things in the moment. Sometimes I have to process them before I can sort of speak to them.
That's a smart way to go anyway, to think before you speak.
Yeah, yeah. That's it.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Very second.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.